We are going live. Attention, attention. You are on the internet. All right. Yay, we did it. We're here. Yay, woohoo! Sorry for the trouble here.
If you can post this link in the chat to the YouTube for the thing, because this is not on the attendee form. Volunteers channel, or sorry, hallway track channel.
It's on the Austin PHP channel.
But for the people here.
Oh, there will be a recording after the fact.
But for the attendee, for the people in the Discord for
real time.
Oh, okay. Let's get things started, and then I will post the link after we get things rolling here. So thank you all for joining Austin PHP. So this is the 21st year of Austin PHP, the meetup. I know Dallas has been around for a while. Boston has been around as well. But last year was a big year for us. I bought cake. So no cake this year, I'm sorry. Cake PHP. But I'm glad you all could make it. So how it's going to work tonight, I think you've all done lightning talks before. And I don't think anybody actually signed up. So did you sign up?
No one told me where. It just said show up.
Okay, great. No worries. We're just going to ask for volunteers, and then I've got a list of topics kind of in the back of my mind here, and then we'll see if anybody's willing to do 5 to 10 minutes on the topic. Sound good? And the goal is for not me to speak. I want everybody else to come up and volunteer and stuff. So that's basically how it's going to work. Krell, you want to go first?
Sure.
Sweet. So start thinking of topics. Otherwise, I will suggest a topic and then ask for hands. And it will be very awkward as we just stand here and look at each other and wait for somebody to volunteer. So let's not have that happen.
So can I actually plug this in without disconnecting all the kind of stuff here for you?
It'll disconnect on there, but yeah, sure.
Okay. How long do I have?
Well,
30 minutes.
This is me we're talking about. I could easily talk for an hour just at random, but I don't think you want that.
Is that okay? Sorry. No. That work?
Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Larry Garfield. I'm one of the speakers here at Longhorn. I'm actually presenting. Wow, that's wavy. I'm presenting tomorrow at the conference on a serialization library I recently built. That's, I would argue, the most powerful serialization library in PHP as of now. But it's powered in half by another library that I did not have any time to put into that talk. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit today. Just give you a quick run through of it for handling attribute parsing. And kind of the side takeaway is just how much you can do with interfaces as a developer interface. So who's used attributes in PHP 8? Okay, not everybody yet, but you'll want to make it everybody soon. So basic idea, you can put attributes on all kinds of things now in PHP. The built-in API for it is okay. It doesn't actually support a lot, and I needed to support a lot of extended functionality. So built the library to do it. The analyzer works on classes, so you can say, all right, grab this class, point in this case, and analyze it with respect to this attribute, which is on the class. And it mostly, at that point, just is wrapping PHP's reflection API and giving you back a copy of that attribute. Cool, that's fine. But most of the time, I actually want to know what that attribute was on. I want to pull some data off of the class itself. So if instead you implement this from reflection class interface on your attribute, then attribute utils will pass the class itself, the reflection class, to this from reflection method. And you can then pull stuff off of the reflection of the class. So pull off the name, you use that for a default value, for example, and so on. A lot you can do there. And you can also pull in other components from the class, and any of those can also get their reflection object. So, for example, I'm going to get the class. I also want to check for properties on that class. I want to know what the attributes are and the properties. So I implement parse properties on my attribute, and that gives me 3 methods. Specifies what attributes to look for on the property, whether or not I should create a default one if it's not there, so I can get default settings for things, and then a method to set it. And attribute utils will set up the attribute for the class, then go through all the properties in the class, read that other property, that other attribute, and pass that to your class. And you can then save it directly, or actually save them directly, or you can pull them apart in some way, up to you. So, like in this case, then my class will have a 2 array property, one with this attribute, and one with the my property attribute with default constructor parameters rather than something specified. So you can have that kind of default behavior just built into the system. And again, it works for properties, constants, methods. Methods you can further nest and get parameters to them. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with that. You can exclude properties if you want, so you can control whether something is going to be included or not. Inheritance. By default in PHP, attributes will not inherit. So if you have one class extends another and the parent has an attribute, the child knows nothing about that. You can opt in to say, no, I do want to know. And yes, use the parent version if I don't override it. You can also, attribute utils works on a single attribute that it scans for, but you can have additional attributes that get absorbed into it. I call those sub-attributes. So in this case, say I have an age sub-attribute, and it should get passed to the from age method. And so the analyzer will check for that attribute then and pass it to that from age method, where I can pull out things I want. I can save the whole object, whatever you'd like to do. And you can also do that with multi-value sub-attributes. When you start combining these, you can do some really advanced things with it. So like in this case, main attribute pulls in these 2 instances of the nose sub-attribute, and it just gives you a single object at the end. All of which you can easily cache with in memory or up to PSR6 or as a file system. It's just a wrapping interface with a single method, so caching it is quite trivial. And since it's not free to do all this analysis, I recommend doing so, because you can then get a metadata picture of your entire application cached into whatever cache system you want, and you never have to hit reflection again. You don't need to load the classes again to know everything you want to know about your system. And a couple of other advanced features, I'm only going to touch on one, because I think it's especially interesting, and that's scopes. Who's used Symfony Serializer? A couple of people. So they have a thing called serialization groups. This is the generic version of that. So you can say, this attribute supports scopes, and you can exclude it. And now we can say, all right, I'm going to use a scope of language. So if I ask for a scope of no language specified, I get this version, nothing here, and nothing here. If, however, I specify a scope language of ES for Spanish, then I get this version of the attribute, this version, nothing here, and nothing here. If I ask for French, then I will get something here, to me, then it's excluded, and so on. So you can have, under different contexts, you get a completely different set of attributes on your class. So this just hit 1.0 earlier this week. It's been out for a while. People are already using it in production. So I offer this to you as attributes are even cooler now. So take a look, have fun. Thank you for your time.
Great. But that's apparently you can't do both. But no, it's fine. Fine for now. Okay, so list of topics. I'm just going to go rapid fire here. So we have PEST, PHP modern front-end frameworks, Vue.js, React, anything JavaScript related, anything security related, async PHP, new hosting options that maybe we haven't heard of. You want to showcase a project or some sort of side project, open source thing, Laravel Breeze, headless CMS, Crash CMS, Tailwind stuff, anything Laravel. Some of those cut it there. How to do good code reviews, caching and queues. So 5 minutes on any of those topics. I'm going to start at the top, and if we can't get somebody to talk about something, then we'll go to the next one. But I'm going to stare at you awkwardly. So PEST. Anybody want to talk about PEST? 5 minutes.
Do a very impressive website to like show some examples here.
Maybe. That is the tricky part. You want to do it from your phone?
I don't think my phone will plug in. I don't think.
Larry, do you want to volunteer your laptop again?
But yours.
Just for a website, like full website? So they can see the screen.
So is someone actually going to talk about this?
Yeah, okay.
Great.
Yeah. So it's hard to be the first volunteer, right? Thank you.
Yeah. I think we'll leave it up there, yeah.
Or not?
Oh, there's 2 plugs.
So there's something this one. Oh, look at this one. Okay, the network was working when I was up here. Why is it not working now?
Doing it live.
I don't think it works. Okay. We're doing it live!
that was the description of my video, because I was, I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
So you get to talk just verbally for a bit while I try and figure this out.
Okay, absolutely. So, my name is Scott Keck-Warren. Can everyone hear me okay? That's that? Yeah, good? Everybody's okay? Okay. My name is Scott Keck-Warren. I've been a professional PHP developer for the past 15 years or so. And recently, I have gotten into talking at these conferences. It's a lot of fun. If you're ever thinking about doing it, I can assure you, you know a little bit more than somebody else in the room, and you can express that information to them. One of the things that I do is I am involved in the PHP Architect YouTube channel, and I make videos that are educational. One of the videos that I just released is about PEST, so this works out really well. So, what is PEST? So PEST is a testing framework. It allows us to build tests and then run the tests so we can see if our code passes those tests. And it is very slick. If I could show it on the screen.
Working at it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the interesting things about PEST is it was built out of the Laravel project. One of the Laravel core contributors is one of the test maintainers. So it has that same fluent interface that you would expect to see from Laravel applications inside of the test. So if you've ever worked with PHP in it, you know there's a lot of stuff where it's like line, right? Where it's just like one statement right after the other. And with pest, instead what you do is you say, hey, I have this variable, right? And you pass it to the expect function, and then you say, I expect this variable to be, and then whatever the thing is you're looking for. So you might say, like, I expect this to be an integer, I expect this to be the value of 42, I expect it to be a string. And so it on top of the fact that it, so that kind of gives you that fluent interface as opposed to the assertion kind of standard that you have with PHP unit, where you say, you know, set up your test, assert this equals true or this equals false. Oops. So that is the basis of it. And it ends up having code that's a lot cleaner to read and a lot easier to use and read. I guess I'm not gonna be able to do any like displays, unfortunately. So you have to take my word for it.
It's with pest.com isn't loading.
Oh, the whole website's not on?
Because it's pest PHP.
Oh. Shall we go? Oh, I've been sort of on the floor.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it doesn't have pest.com. That's a good domain name.
I'm just surprised it wasn't something unfortunate. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Go for
I didn't know what I'm talking about. I might be like 5 minutes already. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So pest install is just like normal. You use Composer, you install it into your application. You have an initialization. How do I get this to zoom?
Control plus.
Hit it with a hammer.
No.
I don't get it.
The ThinkPad, it might was
So you do this init command to get it initialized. It's going to set up all your basic files for you. And actually, you can just run it just like you would. Oops. Sorry, I used this back up. You would run it just like you would kind of expect it. You do vendor bin pest and it spits out the results. This is a lot nicer to read than PHP unit. And when you get error messages, let me find an example of that. Okay, I can't use this mouse pad at all for some reason.
Are you used to a Mac?
I am, yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
not
don't
Mac
know.
converted. That's why.
Okay, so then this is what a test looks like in pest. So instead of us having our standard of, you know, public function, test, whatever it is we're gonna test, instead we get this test function that comes with pest. So we say, hey, I have a test, and we're given the name of the test, and then we're given an anonymous function that does the actual testing. And see that we have like our setup for the test itself, and then we say, I expect value to be 3. And then, if there's an error here, we do all these other things. We expect it to be an integer, we expect it not to be a string, we expect it not to be 4. Like there's all these nice, like read it as a sentence thing, as opposed to this assert is not a string garbage that you get. There's a bunch of them. I don't know where the error messages are. But that's the essential parts of it. The one annoying piece to it is, so it's built on top of PHP unit. So you can install it on your application that's already using PHP unit as a test framework, and then use the pest command line to actually run the PHP unit commands. But then you can't use PHP unit ever again. It stops PHP unit. Yeah, you'll run it and it'll get you interrupted. So I highly recommend it. I'm actually going to include it as part of my talk Saturday if you're at all interested. I'm sure it's a little more cogent than this. So.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Do we have another volunteer?
Hopefully the Wi-Fi holds up for you.
I hope so.
So I'm going to be talking about how we built our client libraries for PHP. So, And you guys asked for volunteers, so you're gonna get what you get. So FusionAuth has a rich API that's all JSON based. And a couple of years ago, we realized that people don't really like writing REST calls against JSON APIs, like raw. And so we started to build out client libraries. And PHP is definitely one of them. We support a number of other ones. It's installed via Composer, and it's a client library that's written as if a bunch of Java developers wrote a PHP client library. Just to be frank, we've heard that from Python developers and JavaScript developers. They say, this looks like it was written by a Java dev. But I think it's really flexible and really powerful. The alternative, which we've actually evaluated pretty intensely, is to use something like OpenAPI. We built an OpenAPI spec. It has 15,000 lines in it. So it's a pretty intense OpenAPI spec. And the issue we found with OpenAPI when we kicked the tires on it, and this was, to be fair, like last year, so things may have changed, is that the things that take an open, does everyone know what OpenAPI is first, actually? Okay, well, I'll just explain real quick. It's a way to specify a REST API in JSON and YAML, which is in some ways just as horrific as it sounds, but it is probably the standard. It grew out of something called Swagger. It's a second version. It's still actively developed, and it's a really great way to specify a REST set of REST endpoints and kind of the arguments they take and things like that. What we ran into is that the things that take that JSON or YAML file and turn it into a client library, they're frankly varying quality. And we didn't kick the tires on the PHP client too hard, but we definitely looked at some of the other options and they just fell short. Especially since our API is pretty complicated, it has a lot of, how do I put this politely? It has a lot of kind of if statements-ish, like some parameters are required. If you have, parameter A, B, and C, then parameters A and B are required. But if you have parameter D, then only parameter A is required, things like that. We'll just have to model. So right now, the plan is to keep doing with our custom homegrown client builder, although I think that in the next year or so, we'll probably take another try at the OpenAPI spec. So how this works is, how's this, that is very small. Let's see. So we have a REST client, which basically we wrote ourselves. We hand-rolled this. This is basically a port of our Java REST client, and all it really does is make HTTP calls. Frankly, I'm not even sure. Well, first of all, you can see it was last updated 3 years ago. So I'm sure it's not using a modern framework. One of our kind of ethoses is that we don't want to depend on a lot. We want to be kind of super lightweight. And so my guess is this is going to be pretty gruesome PHP code. We have a response handler. Where's the actual call? We make an authorization. We put stuff in there. Just kind of looking for the actual thing that doesn't get. Go. Go is the method, and right here we're using curl. So we're using curl. It's a thin wrapper over curl. I'll remind you again, you asked for volunteers. So this FusionAuth client.php is actually a very, very large file, and this is generated every time we do a release. And we basically, at release time or before release, we actually build out a bunch of JSON files that represent each of the API calls that you can make in our own custom DSL, basically. So I'll just look at one of these. This is approving a device. This is our own custom JSON DSL. We have a URI, we have some comments, we have a method, we take parameters, and so we take that, and actually this response object we define elsewhere too. that actually gets, so we have two main pieces of functionality that combined to make that giant PHP file that has all the API calls. We have one that is hand-rolled JSON that represents each REST endpoint and each REST method call. And then we have our domain objects, which are the things that you're actually passing in, like a user object or an application object or something like that that has a bunch of attributes. That second one is basically there's a set of Java classes that are then parsed and turned into JSON. So we have a kind of a long build chain, but the end goal and the end reality is that it ends up being PHP that anyone can kind of compose or pull into their project and then interact with Fusion Auth in a way that feels, if not native to them, a lot better than making raw REST calls. So that's all I got.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next volunteer victim, so who wants to, you want to come up? I saw a hand move up. Okay, come on up. What are you going to be talking about?
My own side project of mine.
Sweet. Make sure to introduce yourself.
I will. Hello. Hi, my name is Ben Bachelet. I'm a PHP software engineer, have been for about 15 years now. And I'm going to just shamelessly plug a project that I created called BBAT Console Color. So I was working on a different project and wanted to do some fun styling on the terminal, and the libraries I found that did that were not great. They were mostly just string names concatenated together and trying to build styles out of that. It wasn't terribly modern or flexible. So I built this to take advantage of the PHP 8.1 enums. So all the styles are defined as a handful of enums within this BBAT console color style namespace. So for example, if you want to just make your text green, you would style apply, then your string, and then style color green. And that would apply the styling around it for on a terminal to make that text green. Similarly, you can do background colors. It has a little bit of intelligence to it to look at the open file handler to see if it looks like a TTY or not. So you can, see, where was it? Yeah, you can create a new styler for a given handle, and if that's pointing to, say, a file output, then it will not apply the console styles to that, right? Because that's where you get those really ugly control characters in your files if you're not careful. But if that looks like just standard out, then it will apply the different styles to that. So we can do background colors. We can also change the style, like the text style of the text. I thought I had a screenshot of all of these up here, but I don't, so I can't really just show you everything. So you're going to kind of take my word on it. But you can see kind of the different text styles you can apply, including bold, italics, underlines. You can theoretically make text blink. I was testing it out a minute ago, and iTerm apparently does not support blink, which is probably a feature. You can add underlines, and then the different colors that are kind of built into your standard ANSI terminal, your green, yellow, blue, magenta, cyan. You can also do 256 colors. So newer terminals have the ability to just do 256 colors, or even newer terminals can do RGB. So you pass it 0 to 255 integers, and it will create an RGB color based on that. Now these are a lot of different things. What if you wanted to apply them all at once? There's a composite style. So you make a new composite style, you pass it the different enums you want, and it will apply all of those styles to your text at once. And you can do some really, really terrible things with that if you really wanted to, but you probably shouldn't. At any rate, I encourage y'all to either add this to a project or or just put the repository down if you would like. There is in here this sample PHP file, and this is just goes through all the different styles it supports and generates an output for all of them. So you can see what the colors look like, what the different text styles look like, and get a sense of what that might look like on your own terminal.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. I think we have 2 more at least. Any other volunteers? Raise your hand or, yeah, okay. So we got 2 more after that. So we'll just keep going. This is great. Let's keep the energy going, guys.
Hi, my name is Charles. I've been a developer in a variety of programming languages for about 12, 13 years now. I'm currently working with Rove, helping them write some PHP code. I wanted to show one of my personal projects that I've been working on that is a dependency injection container powered by PHP 8 attributes. The project is called Annotated Container, and it's really a dependency injection framework and not a dependency injection container itself. It's really designed around, if you've ever worked with Java's Spring Boot library or the Spring Boot framework, a lot of the dependency injection stuff is inspired by that framework. And it's basically intended to allow you to do stuff like this, where you define an interface as a service, and then you can have a concrete class that implements that interface, and then you can later get that fairly cleanly out of your container. You can see where I have a bootstrap, and I just bootstrap a container, and I can get my blob storage. I'm making an interface that I defined up here, and I'm getting back the concrete class that I defined that implemented that interface. The library actually has quite a bit of functionality in it. All of it is very well tested. Sorry, I'm trying to learn this trackpad. I have a lot of I have a lot of documentation in here, including more details on getting started, as well as how you can implement multiple concrete services for the same interface. Let me see if I can. So, for example, your concrete service may not be easily constructed by default. We may not be able to tell what services might need to be injected into that constructor, or you might need to have some special construction logic. You can define a factory for your service, and it's actually fairly easy to do so. I've had several interfaces here, as well as a concrete class, and then I can see that I can create a service factory by providing the service delegate attribute on a function. It can be a static function, or it can be an instance function. If it's an instance function, the instance will actually get created with this service injected into the constructor. So the dependency injection framework has recursive injection. So if your services need to define a service, we'll go and find that service for you and inject it for you. And this allows you to have complete control over your concrete service construction. Some other things that you might want to do that I think are really interesting is resolving an alias. So inside the library, when you have an interface defined as a service and a concrete class defined as a service, we make an alias for that. Well, sometimes you might want to define your own aliases or have more control over what alias is used in a given context. So here I demonstrate where you can actually have a file system storage that's used for your local file system when you're maybe using your local on dev, or maybe you're using an actual on-premises server. and also a service where it's just cloud storage, where I'm probably putting it into S3. So I can actually define a profile on these. So I can define a cloud profile on my cloud service and a local profile on my local service. And then I can actually get a container, depending on the situation that I'm in, that will write to the local file system or write to the cloud service. And I don't need to know anything other than the fact that I'm working with a blob storage. Whether it's a file system or a cloud is not relevant to me when I'm calling the code. It's really just a blob storage interface. One thing, so another thing that I wanted to, some other cool things that I wanted to point out, it is aware of calling post-construct methods. So there is a possibility that you might need to call something after the object is constructed. A good example of this is the PSR logger aware interface. You may need to construct the object and then call set logger on it. This is a way for you to do that. We define an attribute here called service prepare that will get invoked after your object is constructed. And you can also define services within this method signature, and those services will be auto-injected when that service method is called. One last thing, injecting scalar values. Sometimes you may not be able to inject objects themselves. You may have a string or an integer or some other non-object value that you need to inject. If you know what the value is, you can just hard code it with the inject attribute. We also allow you, I also have a concept called a parameter store, where you can programmatically define what the value should be. So you can see here when I can inject the database host from my environment. So I'm going to inject whatever value is in the database host environment parameter into this constructor when the service is created. Again, I've been working on this project for quite a while at this point, and it's dependency injection with PHP 8 attributes. Cool. Thanks. Thank you.
All right. I think we've got one more volunteer. I think we probably have time for one, maybe two after that. But this one will be on inertia JS. There's swap laptops here. Good. I'm going to give this back to Larry. Good. Hopefully. You swapping them is not a good idea. Try unplugging it and then plugging back in.
I wanted to show you some source code, but that only works here. Can we swap the laptops back, please? Okay, so inertia.js, my name is Ralf. I'm from Augsburg, Germany, PHP developer for a few years already. We all know that PHP nowadays is not the only language around there, so we started, like other companies or other developers, more and more to build JavaScript front ends and PHP back ends. In one of the projects, we had a Next.js backend and Symfony, Next.js front end and Symfony with API platform as backend. that worked relatively well, but we were not so amused. I mean, most of us lived in the PHP world, and now we started building routing in Symfony, we started building routing in Next.js. It was just too much decoupled from each other. And then when we were able to launch a new project, one of my guys suggested use Inertia.js. Okay, then we had to look at that. Looked quite interesting. So originally, back when I started with PHP, that was a long time ago, you just wrote everything in PHP, you maybe had the template, back in the time in Smarty it was, and you rendered that HTML file, maybe you had some little JavaScript scripts, but it was only little pieces, but all the application lived in PHP. Now with the split between PHP and the JavaScript application, we had two completely decoupled applications. Everything, the routing and all that worked or lived in JavaScript that called only the backend via an API. And with Inertia.js, you can get away from that again. So you have, for example, let's make that larger. Okay. This would be a very simple controller here. You basically write that, for example, in Symfony, which we do, and instead of then rendering the template, you just call this inertia render function, give it the template name, which is here this users. In our case, that would just be a Vue.js file and some parameters. And all these parameters in the Vue.js world get filled into the properties of the Vue.js file. The Vue.js file, it doesn't get sent to the client. This is already bundled in the Webpack bundle, but the name of the template which should be rendered and all the properties that gets submitted in one single API response to the browser. And when we have a look at this users.view, this is just a regular Vue single file component with script here at the top, strange. Properties, and that then gets built in here into this template. But you can also see here is kind of the parts of the routing. So we have this link, which then goes to /users/NID. And this /users/NID has to be a route in the back end, so in Symfony, not in the front, in the JavaScript front end. And then this /users/ID again renders an inertia view with a view response, and you see that in the browser. You can also do this partial reloading. So for example, when you click in the menu on a link, it will replace all the content on the right of your page, but the menu is going to stay the same. For us, it was quite nice to work with that, because the PHP backend again was more dominant, played a bigger role in that. We didn't just have a JavaScript app plus an API in PHP, and for us it was an advantage to do so. Also, it was an advantage because it's much easier to pass data from the backend to the front end. So, for example, sometimes you have 5 different status values which you want to transfer to the front end. Then either you put them as a copy kind of in the front end and deliver them from there, or you have a set API call which gives you either configuration information or just a different vehicle to transport all these available status to the front end. Here you just push the array with all those status as a property to the template, and you're done. No overhead. That's it.
Mine was also inertia.
Can
can you add more context or,
Yeah, I mean, I can try.
We're already talking about some inertia stuff.
yeah, I mean, the web page is already up, so.
There we go. Hey, I'm Easton. I'm a junior web developer. I've been studying React, Laravel, mostly front end for most of my experience in web development, but I'm kind of venturing more into back end stuff now. Kind of learning PHP and Laravel. I've been doing that for maybe like a year-ish. So yeah, that's my story. Have you ever wanted to build a Laravel app with the flexibility of just having easy Blade components and Blade pages, but you want the power and extensions of React or Vue? Yes, we all want a very specific use case. Well, that's perfect. So introduce inertia. So, go to the basics here. Okay. So, when you're going to render some sort of inertia page, it's either going to be Vue or React. I use React, so I'm just going to switch here. So basically, you're just going to build your React page or component as normal. You can have layouts and everything. So in your Laravel route, you're just going to have your like public function show, and it's just going to return inertia render, and then your React page, and then you pass in any data you want there. And then you're just going to pass it in. For this example, it's your user, just as like a parameter, as you would in a React component, or a prop, rather. Same's use. There's layouts. You're just going to build it the same way as you would a layout in vanilla React. Vanilla React. React's not vanilla. So, if you want to do redirects, now, normally the way you do that is, let's say you have like different pages, you have your home page, your login page, all that. Normally you use A tags or links, but we don't do that in inertia. In inertia, we would, I don't know if it's the right page. Nope, not the right page. We use something called links, which is what it sounds like. It's a link, but instead of prompting a full page reload, it's actually only going to perform a partial reload and give you only the data that's changing. So it's not going to fully re-render, and it's going to be smoother and faster, which is one of the many benefits of React. So yeah, this was the page I was looking for. But yeah, you have your link, with the href like you would normally in an A tag. Just got to import it here. Yeah. So another wonderful feature is if you want to use forms with inertia, it's pretty easy. There's a form helper, so a use form hook basically. So you're going to extract out. There's lots of different things. There's data, set data, post-processing errors are just some of the examples. So you're going to pass in the defaults for the data. So this would just be empty email, empty password. Remember, it's just going to be false. And so what this is going to do is, so let's say that you're adding data into the email field. So it's just going to have an on-change handler. And similar to like setting state, you're just gonna set the data of the email to be the e.target.value. And then once you have all your stuff set, you're gonna have, you can see a submit function here. What this is gonna do is it's gonna use another thing that's extracted from this use form hook, post in this example. And it's just gonna post to a certain page. with all that data. You don't have to pass in the data because it comes with the hook. And yeah, it makes it pretty easy. And if you want to do something, let's see, routing. The documentation is also really easy and clean to read, at least I found. Another example is, anyways, I can just explain it. So it gives you lots of functionality. Like, for example, if you wanted to do something similar to like Axios, it just uses something called router. So instead of axios.get, it's router.get, axios.post with like your data. It's the exact same form, but router, which I think is nicer. Router makes a bit more sense. Axios is like some random made up word. Router actually makes sense. It routes, gets your data, posts your data, and all that. So yeah, but this is great for if you want to spin up a quick Laravel application. You don't have to set up your APIs, and you can basically have the flexibility of Blade with React components and React pages and props and all that familiar, lovely React stuff. And Vue as well. For all you viewers out there, thank you. Any other volunteers? Time for one more. Okay, yes?
Oh, no, sorry, I was waiting.
Okay. Volunteer? All right, great. So I don't have to go. This is perfect.
You still do.
Oh, okay.
That's the one that I need my laptop at.
Okay. Yeah, I can go without a laptop.
Hi everyone, I'm going to look this up and then I'll introduce myself. Did I get it right? I did. All right, I'm Seb. I've been a bug writer for 10 years at this point. I'm from France originally. I worked initially for about a decade in China, and now I'm in the Bay Area in San Francisco. So Larry talked about how he used attributes to build PHP's most advanced and powerful serialization deserialization library. I, on the other hand, built the least powerful PHP serialization and deserialization library. Yeah. Are you scroll?
2 fingers.
There's a hammer.
Or use arrow keys.
All right, arrow keys, thank you. So it's
You can give it your free.
I can absolutely. Good enough? No, a bit more. Oh, that's too good.
There, yeah.
Right, something like that. All right, so it's the least powerful because it's much more focused on a very much more narrow use case, and our use case that we have every day is we work at Square. I work at Square. We have plenty of people building microservices and their APIs, and we need to consume them. It's a lot of JSON, and we'd like to receive that JSON inside of objects. That's the only thing we care about. We care much more about the deserialization and receiving an object than we care about the serialization. And so we made this, which allows you to have a very, very simple interface. You have your class, in this case it's a schedule, it has a start and an end, and you add a trait to it, JSON serialized, and then you can tag any property that you want, and you tag it with JSON if the name is going to be the same between the property and the JSON value that's going to be received, and then you can directly on the method, you can call toJSON to serialize it, or you can call from JSON string if you have the string, or from JSON data if you have it represented as an array, and we'll create your instance for you. If for some reason you've decided that you want the name in PHP to be different than what the name was in JSON, you just specify it as part of that. What else can you do? If you can make your properties private or protected, that works just fine. You can also, where is that? Oh, yeah. So if you receive something that looks like this, where it's the data that you actually care about is wrapped inside of the data property or something like that, you don't have to create an object that is going to just have the property data, and you can specify the path from which to extract the property that you're actually after. And what else are fun things we can do with this? So we have a way to specify if you have an array of things, then you have to, because we don't have generics, to directly say what the type of the thing is going to be when you declare an array for a property. So inside of JSON, you can define that the type is going to be of something for all the values in your array. It doesn't have to be an array. There's a parameter that allows you, if you have a custom collection class, we can define that as well. And honestly, it's a pretty simple library. That's about it. That's most of what it does. Grabs your data from JSON, puts it in the class with the least amount of fluff required to do that.
All right, we'll give Larry his laptop back. I will do this. Got it. Thank you, Larry. Everybody give Larry a
And we still have one person watching the stream. Are you with us? I don't know. All right. Let's get this going here. All right, we're back. Everybody is back on the internet. Yay! All right, so I'm gonna tell you a little story. I'll keep it brief. We got speaker dinner in about 30 minutes or so. Everybody has heard about ChatGPT, I hope. Everybody raise your hand if you've heard of AI. The marketers, I think, are just doing their best to shove it down our throats. So ChatGPT is super great, and I am going to tell you a story how I used it like this week. So we had a problem trying to speed up a node app, a monolith node app, right? And our package JSON, it's not that big, but node modules is like 100 gig, maybe. And it takes like minutes from clean install. I'm like, how do we speed this up and make it everybody's life easier, right? To work with Node. So I found this application called Verdaccio. I guess it's an Italian word for green, but is a local NPM proxy. So you can set up on your home lab server or on your own server. And so it'll change all the URLs in your package.lock JSON file to point to the proxy. So super great for working locally, not super great for collaborating with your team. So I'm like, all right, how do I fix this? So initially I wrote it, an NPM module, and it works okay, but soon discovered that there's this common JS and ESM, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Let's just solve this problem once and for all. And so I don't know if you can guess what I did, but I rewrote it in Rust. So,
like you do.
Yeah, just like you do. So now I have a binary. So I didn't know any Rust. I mean, I know C++ a little bit. It's been a while, but I'm like, all right, well, let's kind of like throw all the tools at this thing. And in a couple hours, I had my first crate module and released it. And, it was not that difficult. So ChatGPT, I call him Chat Bro. I encourage you all to trying to spread the good word. Chat Bro, I think is, he's kind of a programmer. I imagine, he's like helping you out in, the hard times when you're like struggling with something. So me and him just, I'm like described what I wanted and kind of came up with a prototype. And I'm like, I don't think that looks right. Let's redo this part. And in a couple hours we had something working. So definitely encourage you to check it out. Obviously, be careful with what you submit to ChatGPT. There is an enterprise version where they promise not to use their data to retrain the model. But the paid version I've definitely found to be a lot better than the free version. So definitely check out that. I think it's worth money. And comparing that to Copilot, I would say Copilot's really good for smaller blocks and kind of like methods and kind of, just like smaller little things you're trying to solve. I think we might get to the point I've heard where you might be able to say, explain this piece of code or something from your IDE, but it's not there yet. So, ChatGPT, like you can put it in, you're like, explain this section or something, and it does a great job. So it's definitely capable of doing that, and we'll probably get there at some point. But Copilot, the one good thing about Copilot, completely private, they don't use your code. They've already stolen all our code, so no worries there. But they don't use your code to improve their models. So that is one benefit of Copilot over ChatGPT. But yeah, that's it. Thank you all for coming out. Hope you have a good conference, and yeah. Attend your local meetups, because I hope you had fun tonight. So we'll wrap it up here, and no cake this year, unfortunately, but we have beer, I hear. So thank you, Omni.